Come join me on my second channel, Jaguar Gator 8, where we'll talk all things college football. New video drops every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Click the card in the upper right corner to watch the latest video. And now, on with our feature presentation. There's an old saying that you should bet on yourself. If you're confident in your abilities, and you're confident that you can perform at a high level, then bet on yourself to maximize the benefits. A great example of this recently was with Dallas Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott. Prescott decided that he was going to play on the franchise tag, and turned down a 5-year deal worth $110 million guaranteed, and averaged out to about $34.5 million per year. And the gamble paid huge dividends, as Prescott eventually signed a contract worth way more than that, paying out $160 million over 4 years for an average of $40 million per year, and featured $126 million in guaranteed money, an NFL record at the time. Sometimes, betting on yourself can lead to incredible results, especially when it comes to securing the bag. And sometimes, it can lead to unfortunate disaster. This player right here is Philadelphia Eagles linebacker Byron Evans, and he was an absolute anchor on Philadelphia's defense for years. And in 1994, he was seeking a brand new contract. When the Eagles gave it to him, he was not pleased with what he thought was a lowball offer, and he decided to bet on himself in hopes of getting a better deal. The decision immediately backfired, as what followed might be the biggest cautionary tale and unfortunate tale of why sometimes betting on yourself is not the best thing to do. This is the story behind Byron Evans and the worst gamble by any player in the near 90-year history of the Philadelphia Eagles franchise. Before I talk about the gambling question and what exactly Evans did, we need some context to understand just who Byron Evans is, and how well he was playing. After being drafted by the Eagles in 1987 in the 4th round out of Arizona, and after playing sparingly in 2 seasons outside of special teams duty, head coach Buddy Ryan gave Evans a challenge in 1989. He was going to be manning the defense. He was going to be the one calling all the shots as the team's middle linebacker. The result was an amazing 1989 season where he had 3 games with 20-plus tackles, and not only led the NFL with 184 tackles, but set a then NFL record for most tackles in a single season. Obviously, tackles are not exactly the best way to show how good a linebacker is. However, while he never received an Associated Press honor, various publications gave him first-team and second-team honors throughout his career. And he was so good that then head coach Buddy Ryan, never one to mince words, gave him about the greatest compliment that a linebacker could receive. Ryan said that Evans was the hardest-hitting linebacker in football, not Mike Singletary, and said that at this stage in his career, Ryan was further along than Singletary. And remember, Ryan was the defensive coordinator of the '85 Bears, and loved Mike Singletary, an eventual Hall of Famer, to the moon and back. So for him to say this about Byron Evans showed just how good he was, and just how important he was to the team and to the success of the defense. Evans racked up 691 solo tackles from 1989 to 93, and made an impact not just against the run, but against the pass as well, as in 1992, the Eagles made the playoffs with the 6th best defense in the league, and on that defense, Evans led the team with 4 interceptions. How Evans never made a Pro Bowl is beyond me, because he was a force to be reckoned with, and while a lot of other Eagles got credit defensively, like Jerome Brown, Reggie White, and Eric Allen, it was clear to anyone watching that Evans was one of the best players on the field. Heck, even his own defensive coordinator in 1991, Bud Carson, said as much, and said that Evans absolutely deserved to be in the Pro Bowl. It seemed like with each passing season from the end of the 80s to the start of the 90s, Evans was having a better season, was consistently improving, and was showing no signs of slowing down. And his impact really could not be overstated. He was inactive for 5 games in 1993. When he was on the field, the Eagles were 7-4. In the 5 games he didn't play, they were 1-4. And we'll notice a very similar trend in 1994 when we cross that bridge. So just a little bit of foreshadowing for you. However, by 1994, Evans was not thrilled with how the Eagles were running things, especially after a bunch of his great defensive teammates like Seth Joyner, Clyde Simmons, and Reggie White left the team in free agency because the Eagles didn't pay them enough. Entering 1994, Evans was in the final year of a 3-year deal worth $3 million, so an average of $1 million per year. And Evans was quite blunt about the fact that in all likelihood, this was going to be his last season with the Eagles unless they gave him a good contract offer and gave him what he wanted. As he said, "I'm not the best in my position, but I'm up near the top. And if they got rid of those guys like Joyner, Simmons, and White, what does that say about the next person coming up, you know? What does that say about me?" He even went as far as going to team minicamp in a Phoenix Cardinals baseball cap, where Joyner and Simmons went to in free agency. And owner Jeffrey Lurie didn't want Evans getting away like the other players did. He said during minicamp, "I'm certainly a Byron Evans fan. I clearly would like to keep Byron in an Eagles uniform next year and in the future. However, in order to do that, it was going to require a significantly better contract, and it was moving along really slowly." The good news for Evans was that even though he was thinking about holding out a training camp until he got a new deal so he wouldn't have to play on his option year, he genuinely thought that the Eagles were negotiating in good faith, so he came and joined the team, opting not to hold out. As he said, "They said they're going to work things out in good faith, so I'm optimistic about that. Hopefully they keep their word, and if not, I'll have to do other things." The bad news for Evans was that despite these good faith negotiations, nothing was getting done, as Evans was still without a deal after training camp. Even through the first half of the 1994 season, as the Eagles were 6-2 and were looking like one of the best teams in football, and as Evans was having another great season in charge of that defense, which ranked 7th in the league, he was still on that option year, with nothing past 1994. Finally, progress was made. Finally, the Eagles gave him an offer that was better than what he was making before. But it was not enough in Evans' eyes. Instead of making $1 million per year, he was going to make $1.7 million per year, and would receive a signing bonus somewhere in the ballpark of $600,000 to $800,000. That is a lot of money. In fact, it would make him one of the top 7 paid inside linebackers in football. But Evans wanted to be paid like a top 10 linebacker, including outside. Evans was seeking $2 million per year to put him in that line of payment. This $1.7 million offer per year wasn't enough, and Evans was willing to bet on himself to not sign that contract, even though it would pay him like one of the top 25% of starting inside linebackers in football. As Burt Kinnerk, the agent for Byron Evans, said on the move, "The Eagles are about to lose Byron Evans. If the Eagles don't show they're more serious about keeping Byron in Philadelphia, you can assume he won't be back." Right now, based on where the Eagles are with their offer, I'd say it's almost a certainty that Byron will be on the free agent market. Evans was turning down this deal over a $300,000 difference. He was going to bet on himself, was going to play the rest of the way on the option, and then sign the deal in free agency that just about everyone knew he would get. However, almost immediately, he was going to regret not listening to the words of the Steve Miller Band, because he was going to regret not taking the money and running. November 13th, 1994. It's week 11 of the NFL season, and we have a big game on our hands between the Philadelphia Eagles and Cleveland Browns at Veterans Stadium. The Eagles enter this one at 7-2, and with a win, can be 3 up on a playoff spot with 6 to play, all but assuring themselves of a spot in the postseason barring, I don't know, one of the greatest single-season collapses in NFL history. But that's not going to happen. And this game was big for the division as well, as Philadelphia needed to win this game to keep pace with the Dallas Cowboys at 8-1 if they wanted the NFC East crown, a first-round bye, and possible home field advantage. The Browns also entered this game at 7-2, so you had 2 teams with 7 wins going up against each other in one of the biggest games of the entire season on paper. However, for the purposes of our story, the actual game itself isn't important. The Browns won it convincingly, taking it 26-7 and scoring the final 16 points of the game, outscoring Philly 13-0 in the second half. Rather, it's what happened during the game that's the real concern. Because during the game, the last thing that could happen to Byron Evans happened. Picture the absolute worst case scenario for what can happen to a guy playing out the final year of his contract. And yep, that's exactly what happened. In the second quarter, on first down inside Philly's red zone, the handoff went to running back and eventual Pro Bowler Leroy Hoard. The good news for Philly was that even though the run went for 9 yards, it was called back for holding, backing the Browns up. But no Philly fan cared about that, because the bad news, and the more important news, was that on this play, The anchor of their defense, Byron Evans, went down, and went down hard. You can get an idea of what happened on the overhead angle, but his leg went in a direction that it was not supposed to go in. Just like that, 10 days after rejecting a contract that would have paid him out over $5 million in 3 years, and would have made him one of the highest paid middle linebackers in football, Evans was out with a broken leg. And everyone watching this knew that this injury was serious, and that not only was his season in danger, but his entire football career was in danger. Consider this. Elsewhere in the division on that day, the Cardinals beat the Giants 10-9. And after the game, Cardinals safety Andre Waters saw what happened. And instead of being happy about his team winning, he was distraught and began crying and closing his eyes. Waters said, "He's a good friend, like a brother. A guy like Byron Evans doesn't come along every day. It has nothing to do with football. This goes beyond football." Seth Joyner, also on the Cardinals and also a former teammate of Evans, saw the injury and said an expletive. The injury was so bad that he wasn't just going to be out for the rest of the 1994 season, but the team trainer, Otho Davis, was so pessimistic that he thought he'd be out for the 1995 season as well. And that was on the more optimistic side. As Davis said, "I think at this point, it could be a career-ending injury." And as you can imagine, understandably so, the $1.7 million per year offer was off the table. Bob Wallace, the chief negotiator for the Eagles, said on whether the offer was still valid after the injury, he rejected it. Circumstances have now changed. The Eagles faltered in Evans' absence, going on a 7-game losing streak to go from 7-2 to 7-9. And you can learn more about one of those games, a loss to the Atlanta Falcons, where Rich Kodite made one of the dumbest coaching decisions you're ever going to see in your life by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But Evans was unsigned when free agency opened up. By August of 1995, Evans was still unable to run laterally, and there was a new coaching staff in Philadelphia who didn't really care for Evans, with new head coach Ray Rhodes flat out saying when asked about the possibility of a Byron Evans return, "Byron Evans is somebody we shouldn't waste a whole lot of energy talking about." So that tells you just about everything you need to know on what his thoughts were on that matter. But even if Rhodes wanted him, the rehab just did not go well for whatever reason. He tried his hardest to come back. He really wanted to come back. But in June of 1996, he announced his retirement from the NFL, unable to continue because of the injury. That game against the Browns was the last time he ever stepped foot on an NFL field. Evans said, "I just came to the realization that I'd done all I could trying to get back, and it was time to move on and do my own thing. Sometimes, no matter how much time and energy and work you put in, it's not enough. It's not in the cards. Any other job, no problem. But with this injury, playing in the NFL, it just wasn't meant to be." Fortunately, Evans doesn't kick himself over how it all ended. He said that it was all a part of God's plan, and said years after the fact, "I was getting ready to sign for all this money, but the Bible tells us, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? And what exchange would a man do for his soul? I was getting ready to do all this, but the Lord had different plans for me." At least he's at ease about the situation, as hard as it must have been. Because at the end of the day, Evans went from one of the best linebackers in football and $5 million in the bag to having absolutely nothing. He bet on black, and it came up on red. He bet on himself and lost big time. It truly is a shame how his career ended, because he was a great player, and by all accounts, a great guy. But this whole situation is a cautionary tale, because it's called betting on yourself for a reason. For every story you hear about a person betting on himself and cashing out big time, you get stories like this, where someone bets on himself and loses everything. Was it worth it to quibble over $300,000 where you're going to be making $1.7 million per year? Would you have done the same thing? Would most players have done the same thing? Who's to say? It's almost impossible to put yourself in Byron Evans' shoes. But for as great of a player as he was on the field, he's best remembered today for what he did off the field. Or rather, what he didn't do by not signing that contract. And such is the life of the gambler. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com And be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaguarGator9. To see college football videos, subscribe to JaguarGator8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. So you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.